What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. Because I'm streaming on Thursday night, I thought to myself, you don't need to do a video, which is why I'm sat here on Thursday recording a video, of course. And I thought at this stage of the season, there's a lot of wildcards being activated. In Game Week 2, 3, 4, we're going to see quite a few, then a few more. And once we get past Game Week 10, it'll start to quieten down a bit. And because so many people are thinking about it, and I really wanted to talk about it without doing my own draft, because I think when you're not actually wildcarding, it's hard to give it the same proper thought as when you are. So I thought I'd get your draft similar to what I did pre-season. I've got 4 wildcard drafts that people sent through to me, and I'm going to go through and basically take a look at them and not try and like trash them, but give you some points to think about, especially if you're doing yours as well, because the tweet I put out got loads of responses, so it looks like there's quite a few Game Week 2 wildcards activated. So before we get into the first one, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It'd be much appreciated. Give it a like if you enjoy it. Let's jump into it. The idea of the video is, instead of going through and saying, if I was wildcard and I'd pick this player, that player, I'd have this player for captain, I'd be looking at these players, is going through the drafts and kind of giving my opinion on who's chosen. Because a lot of the players that are going to be in these drafts are going to be the ones under consideration anyway. So that's essentially giving you my thoughts in the same way as I might have done these videos in the past. So first up is Tom at FPL. First of all, thanks for everyone that sent me their teams through. So straight away gone for the Aston Villa connection in goals with Martinez and Steer. That might not be a bad option. One thing I would say is a lot of Aston Villa love. Don't get me wrong, Martinez is a great keeper, or at least he's been great in the very small sample size that we've seen him for Arsenal. Is a lot of people are basing this post-lockdown where their defensive stats were better, right? 100% they were better. I think they pretty much have the amount of shots in the box that they were conceding each game. But obviously before that, they were pretty bad. So as of right now, we've not even seen them play this season in the league. So it's very hard to know what their defence will be like. But to be fair, there's not too many other 4.5 million goalkeepers. Like McCarthy, a lot of owners are worried about him already. Ryan, we're not expecting a huge amount of clean sheets. Plus, in this squad, we've got Lamptey on the bench anyway. And the only other option that I would be looking at is probably Meslier from Leeds as well. Leeds defence could be decent. I know they got spanked a bit by Liverpool, but that's Liverpool. They do that to teams. I think it'd be different going forward. But yeah, Martinez not too bad. As long as Steer is the number 2, but obviously Heaton might be back at some point. So it's not necessarily the same combination as Ryan and Button for Brighton that we've seen in the past, but still decent. Straight away, I look at this attack and think, that is amazing. Werner, Martial, Calvert-Lewin, Rashford, Rodriguez, De Bruyne and Willian in there. But of course, there's no Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, whether or not this is a good move is still hard to say. I think anyone that's getting rid of Trent after one game week based on the fact they conceded 4 goals is absolutely crazy. I don't know what the original team looked like, so maybe in game week 1, Tomo didn't have Trent Alexander-Arnold in. But this is a big decision, and this is the one major overall issue with wildcarding. In game week 2, you have to make huge decisions, like getting rid of Trent Alexander-Arnold before you've even seen any more matches after that Leeds game. So it's a big decision. It's not like you can't get him back in, but it's going to take 2 moves for sure. Maybe you're going to have to get rid of Lucas Digne, who, by the way, I do think is a great option. I'm not sure he's so good at put him in at the expense of Trent, but that would be a bit of a worry for me. If he goes on and has another great season, 200 plus points, he's going to be a huge miss. For 1.5 million more, you can get him over Lucas Digne. How would I get him into this team? If you wanted to swap him back in for Digne, you could get rid of William, for example, and maybe downgrade to another 5.5 or 6. Granted, the 5.5 million midfielders are not that exciting. Podense at Wolves could be good if he keeps his place, but I cannot imagine Jota just stays on the bench for the rest of the season, right? That's just not going to happen. And if they sign a right wing back, Traore is going to be pushed further forward at times as well. So Neto, Podence, is what we said pre-season. Neto, Podence, Traore and Jota all competing for just a couple of spots up front. Overall, though, I like the team. Obviously, one of the downsides to wildcarding this week is you've got to put Kevin De Bruyne in now, which is not necessarily a downside depending on how you look at it, but I'm not expecting a huge amount of goals against Wolves. I do like the size pick, though. I think as it stands right now, he is the best Wolves pick, and that's not just a knee-jerk. I think in Game Week 1, I really wanted Vinagre to work, but obviously it's not going to. And Marçal for 0.5 million more didn't look that attacking, whereas we know Saiss has got a bit of goal threat, so he's definitely better than Cody. Even though Cody's 100% nailed on, but I think Saiss is pretty much that as well at this point. And obviously he's cheaper than Bolly, so really like that pick. I think, put it this way, I'm not necessarily looking at wildcarding, but once the transfer window's shut and I know who's going to be playing left wing back and right wing back for Wolves, I'm very tempted to double up because it's such a good defence. I think it can provide excellent value. So having one Wolves defender in there is pretty much an absolute must, I think. Mitchell, obviously, we know is not going to be a full-time kind of player going forward. It'll probably be Van Aanholt once he's fit. But overall, I like the balance of the team. I think Werner, I'm glad that you haven't kind of knee-jerked him out. I don't think he was played that bad, and there should still be goals to come for him. I quite like the Man United double-up. I do still think long-term the Chelsea double-up could be as good with Pulisic and Werner, but until they're fit, I just wouldn't go there. So I think it's correct not to have Havertz or Werner in there. So yeah, I really like what you've done with this team. I like what you can do without Trent. And it is in the back of my mind to consider that eventually. And I know everyone will say, well, Trent's amazing, he's going to get 200 points. But if you could get, say, Lucas Digne close to that, and you save 1.5 million, that might be better for your attack. Or, let's say Wolves sign a right wing back or another left wing back to play ahead of Marçal, who's very attacking, only comes in at 5.5 or 6. They could not get the same points as Trent, I'm not saying that, but they could get near enough the same for less money, and you can then put into your attack. So it is a big risk, not going for Trent, but I think you can see what you can do with an attack when you do it. So I actually got Path's team from Patreon, and when he sent it to me, I thought, that's great, I can talk about Patreon during the video. Thanks very much for that. It's an excellent segue. If you do want to sign up to Patreon, there's a link in the description below, patreon.com/letstalkfpl. There's extra content there. There'll be a Q&A coming out on Friday. There's Slack access, there's WhatsApp access and stuff like that. So link in the description below if you want to get involved with that. And thanks for Path for sending me over this team on Slack this morning. So again, there is no Trent Alexander-Arnold. And again, it's a pretty nice attack. In this one, it's a little bit different because instead of Rashford, there's Fernandes. Instead of Werner, there's Vardy. So they cost a little bit more money. So Cleek is in there for Leeds. Now, one thing I'll say about him is he should have penalties. I don't think it's guaranteed. I think when Seb came on to Fantasy Football Scout and talked about penalties for Leeds, Cleek is probably the one that they all think is going to have them. But I do think Bamford's taken some at times as well. So I don't know if Cleek is suddenly the best 5.5 million forward, but I can see why people quite like him. The only thing I would say about this one versus maybe the last one is there's no Trent, and I don't know, the attack just doesn't look quite as nice with, the last one had Werner and Martial. This is Vardy with Wilson and Calvert-Lewin. What I will say is I'm not sure how much money is in the bank. Maybe there's some money left over. And I do like Wilson as a pick for 6.5 million. One thing to do at this stage of the season, because, you know, I like stats. I talk about them quite a lot. I've talked about them for last season. But we don't have much to go on for this season yet. And obviously some stuff's not going to change. Liverpool's still going to be a good defence. Wolves is still going to be a good defence, etc., etc. But Callum Wilson, and one of the things I would look for at this stage of the season is how sharp a player looks. And Callum Wilson looked on it. Like he was just ready to go, so fit, so fast. I was really impressed with him in that first game. Now, it was West Ham. Probably a little bit easier to look good against West Ham. But he has got a pretty steady fixture run for a good amount of fixtures. Like we're talking like 10 or 12 game weeks. Of course, there's the odd tough one in there, as there always will be. But his goal scoring record, or at least his underlying stats for the last kind of 2 or 3 seasons, are quite good for someone that's 6.5 million. And if you can get back to not last season, but the season before, those kind of performances, he's going to be a bargain option for 6.5. So I actually quite like him in drafts. And obviously, you know how much I love Calvert-Lewin. Obviously, got his goal. Wasn't that impressive in terms of the amount of shots and stuff he had. But as someone pointed out to me, there was a pass back to Rodriguez, and Rodriguez kind of scuffed the shot. There was that pass from Richarlison that never was. But yeah, ultimately, this is the kind of team you're going to build if you want Vardy. Now, for me, again, I don't know what the previous team looked like. I'm not suddenly rushing out to buy Vardy based on game week 1. We already knew he had penalties. He had 0, I think it was 0 shots in the box for game week 1, which isn't great. Doesn't mean that's going to happen going forward. Burnley at home, Man City away, I believe it is, the next 2 fixtures for Vardy. So for me, I think there's better options out there. Maybe Werner, maybe Martial you could put in. But I've not really got anything against Vardy. It's just not my preference right now. And I'm not trying to, you know, change people to, or make people change their teams into my team. Absolutely not. But that's just something to think about. I do think for the defenders you've got, it's perfectly fine to bench Slice this week. One thing I would say is for anyone that's building a draft, and they're trying to worry about having a defender to cover Slice this week, I would just play him if it comes down to that. In this particular draft, if you're happy with those defenders, then they're really good options. But if you're not happy with playing the other defenders, I would just play Slice. I don't think City are going to score a huge amount of goals. Chances of getting a clean sheet are slim, but I would just take the risk. Justin, I think, is a really good pick. We already know that Pereira is going to be out till October anyway, and there is no guarantee that when he's back and fit and ready to properly train, he's going to be straight back into the side. So I think with the fixtures, there's enough upside to go for Justin, knowing though that down the line you are going to have to make a switch. But as long as you're okay playing Justin or Lewis most game weeks, you can just play Digne and Slice kind of every single week going forward because the fixtures are just that good. And you've got Bruno Fernandes in there as captain, so no Aubameyang, which I think is fine. If you're building a wildcard side and you want De Bruyne long term, it's probably okay to go without Aubameyang this week. But obviously you are going to have to captain a Man United player and hope the Crystal Palace are not as maybe good as they were defensively against Southampton. I don't know if that would be a walkover for Man United. They do obviously have the team to kind of break low blocks now. But we saw against Crystal Palace last year, by the way, when Man United were in that good form, they did struggle to score against them for a long period of time in that game, or at periods of time in that game. So something to think about. But if Fernandes gets a couple of penalties, he's going to do the business. I got to be honest, I wasn't going for him, but I am wavering a little bit now. Okay, so finally Trent Alexander-Arnold is back. I didn't want to go through all these drafts without having him in at least one side. So thanks for sending this one, Connor. I will say, I feel like there's a lot of knee-jerking going on here. Now, as I've said already, I've not seen anyone's previous team for Game Week 1 before looking at their drafts, but Gabriel's in, just scored for Arsenal. Justin's in, just got an assist and a clean sheet for Leicester. Hendrick is in, goal and assist. Like, maybe Hendrick will be the best option for 5 million, but he's not a natural-born goal scorer, even assister in that team. And I'm not even sure if he's 100% nailed on either. I guess it probably got a good chance of playing going forward, but who knows? Like, once Ryan Fraser's in that team, where does St. Maximin go? Does that leave Hendrick on the right? Will Almiron play there sometimes? I'm just not too sure about that one. But potentially with the fixtures, he could be okay. But I wouldn't be expecting a goal and assist from him every week. Souček could still be a better option, even with the fixtures. Bearing in mind, you're building a wild card, you need to think about it a bit more long term as well, especially this early in the season. So not necessarily those players are bad options, but I think Hendrick I would definitely look at because I wouldn't be expecting too much from him. Justin I've just spoken about, I think it's okay to have him. And Gabriel, I don't know what to make of the Arsenal defence because the numbers weren't good last year, right? And loads of people keep messaging me that it was better as when Arteta came in. Well, actually, the numbers didn't get that much better. I know they had some good performances against the likes of Liverpool, but even in the Community Shield, I think it was, when you looked at the underlying numbers, Liverpool created better chances. So on another day, they could have won. So I'm not saying the Arsenal defence isn't better now, and they have made some signings, of course. We don't know how they're all going to gel together, and they have only played Fulham, right? Don't get too caught up on Arsenal because they've played Fulham. I think they played Man City and Liverpool away in the next 4 fixtures. So they could be good, and 5 million could be a good price for Gabriel, especially if he keeps scoring. But obviously, he's probably only going to get, what, 2 or 3 more over the course of the season, probably, maximum. So yeah, he's an interesting pick. For 5 million, West Ham away is looking okay for a clean sheet. But going forward over the next kind of 3 to 4 fixtures, I'm not 100% convinced there's too many. But for 5 million, you can have Saiss instead. Personally, I would rather have Saiss in ahead of Gabriel or Shaw, one of the two. Now, Shaw's an interesting one. Obviously, the left-back transfer's fallen through. I think Shaw would have been first choice anyway. And again, Man United's defence last year was actually very good. So I do think he's an okay pick. And I like that you've got those 5 million price points because you can just move around kind of as you wish. And Pickford's an interesting choice, right? And not someone, to be honest, that I considered. But now I'm thinking about it, 5 million to get into that Everton defence. So you've got right back, you've got Coleman. I'm not sure I'd want him in my team. John Joe Kenny could come in at some point. Lucas Digne is a great option, but obviously 6 million. Then you've got the centre-backs. I actually wonder if Pickford at 5 million, if you're going to spend 5 million on the keeper, might be one of the best choices now. Like Ramsdale, if I'm wildcarding this early, I wasn't too up on Sheffield United anyway, and I'm certainly not after the way they conceded so early against Wolves. Of course, after that, they did okay. But yeah, I think Pickford, I actually don't think that's a bad shout at all. I think the fixtures for Everton are quite good. And with that midfield they got now, they're going to keep more clean sheets. I love that you've gone double Man City. I'm finding it really hard to decide between Sterling or De Bruyne. So why not put in both? And up front you've got Calvert-Lewin and Martial, which I really like. The good thing about De Bruyne and Sterling is you can drop down to pretty much anyone. Obviously, if you wanted to go up to Aubameyang or Mane, you'd have to find a little bit of money. Although Mane's already come down to 11.9 million. But if you want to go down to Gareth Bale, it sounds like he's signed now. Son, Pulisic, Havertz, I don't know, Rashford, Fernandes, anyone like that, you can do that quite easy. Now, double City against Wolves, I don't really like too much. But again, you're building a wild card for the long term. And from Game Week 3 onwards, hopefully there'll be pretty decent bets, and we know how many chances they create. So overall, quite like it. Davis on the bench, I don't think is a huge issue. You could risk Brewster on the bench. My only worry is if he doesn't go, and he is strongly linked to Sheffield United, so he could go. But if he doesn't, you lock in a Liverpool place, and that would be annoying long term. But it might be worth the risk if you think that he's going to get signed by Sheffield United. So it's Lou with a bunch of numbers up next. No Trent Alexander-Arnold. When I choose these drafts, when I put out a tweet, I pretty much picked them at random. Like, Path sent me his on Slack, through the Patreon Slack, but I didn't ask him to send it. And 3 of the teams out of 4 have not got Trent Alexander-Arnold. Again, I'm not saying he's essential or he has to be in your team, but I can't think that if he got an assist or if he got a clean sheet in Game Week 1, I would have seen this many drafts without him. So yeah, it's something to think about for sure if you're wildcarding this week. There's a few things I like about this team, but definitely a few things I would be massively concerned about. First of all is the defence. You've got no defenders costing more than 4.5 million. How would you switch them to like a £5 million defender plus? There's a lot of good options, or a lot of potential good options. If Reece James nails down a spot, he looks great. Seiss at 5, already spoken about. Shaw could be okay. I'm not saying like he's a must-have or anything like that, but £5 million Man United defender could be decent. We could have 5.5 million Chilwell, 6 million Lucas Digne. How do you get to those players? Now, obviously, you can just downgrade one of your midfielders, but you've got to already think about how you're going to be doing that. And obviously having El Neni in there as well, you've basically got to choose playing El Neni, Mengi, who's not even going to play for Man United, Brewster, who we don't know is going to leave, or Mitchell, who might lose his spot when Vanano's out. So I don't like those, having so many cheap players. If it was me, I'd probably downgrade one of the midfielders. Personally, I think Aubameyang, Fernandes, Salah and De Bruyne is probably a little bit too much. You got James Rodriguez, not J Rodriguez like at Burnley, but James Rodriguez 7.5. You got potentially Chelsea midfielders down the line if you want to play 3-5-2, and I would also let you upgrade El Neni as well. So for me, I know West Ham's a good fixture, but El Neni and Aubameyang, long term at least, could be, I don't know, James Rodriguez, a 7.5 million. So straight away, you've got 4.5 million extra to spend on El Neni. Imagine that. Son and James Rodriguez, or Aubameyang and El Neni playing most weeks. I know which one I would prefer. It doesn't have to be those two players, but that's something to think about. If you really wanted Aubameyang captain this week, which by the way is a great shout, maybe you don't have De Bruyne this week, and maybe you do the Aubameyang to De Bruyne switch next week, although I fully appreciate that eats up an extra 0.5 million that you cannot spend this week. So something to think about. In terms of the 4.5 million defenders you've picked, I think they're pretty good. No real massive issues with that. Interestingly, double Everton attack. I don't hate it, right? I've looked at potential ways to get Bruno Fernandes into my team, right? In my actual, my non-wildcard team. And one of the ways is Pulisic to Fernandes and Werner down to Richarlison. Now, a lot of people will see double Everton attack and say no, because it's two forwards. But if it was Calvert-Lewin and James Rodriguez, which, by the way, if you're going to stick with the two Everton up front, I don't know if triple attack is the way to go. But when I said Aubameyang and El Neni and James and Son, like I said, think about the combination you could go for. But yeah, Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison. If you had Calvert-Lewin and James Rodriguez, or Richarlison and James Rodriguez, no one would bat an eyelid. But because it's two forwards, or at least two forwards in the game, people won't like it. But I don't see a huge issue with it. The fixtures coming up are good. Richarlison had a lot of chances in that Game Week 1 fixture against Spurs. Didn't put them away, but on another day he would. And I think Calvert-Lewin's a good option for 7 million. Again, you can move them down later on to a kind of 6.5 or £6 million striker. So I think a lot of people will look at that and dislike it. I actually don't. I think double up on Everton attack, what we hope they can do with the fixtures they got, is not a bad plan at all. So why not have the two forwards? If Richarlison was listed as midfielder, obviously it would be better. But he's not now. But yeah, overall, the one thing I would consider with this draft, and any people that are making drafts, is the amount of cheap players you have and how are you going to upgrade them. It's all well and good having four huge big hitters in midfield, right? You've got 4 players, 10.5 million or plus, but it does strongly affect the other team. And I don't think you can last with having to play El Neni or Mitchell or Brewster going forward. If Brewster does move to Sheffield United, maybe he'll play. But let's not forget, Chris Wilder does rotate his forwards quite a lot. Now, you can't imagine they would loan Brewster without, saying to Liverpool he's going to be a sure starter or get a lot of starts. But it would be a worry for me. So I'd be massively concerned about the defence and how many times you're going to have to play a very cheap player alongside those very good-looking premium big midfielders. So that's it for this video. Like I said at the start, I'm not necessarily going to do one of these every single week, but it's during this early parts of the season, I do think they're kind of useful. So let me know in the comments below if you still want to see a few more in the next few early game weeks. And obviously, if you do really like it, please do give it a thumbs up. It does help me know what kind of content you enjoy on the channel. And of course, if you haven't already, please do hit that subscribe button. We're on our way to, I don't know how many subscribers, but you're going to want to know when all my other videos are coming out and when I'm going live. So hit that notification bell as well. If you really want to support me and the channel a little bit further, I have Slack access, WhatsApp access, plus extra content on patreon.com/letstalkfpl. Links to that in the description below. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you later on this evening if you're watching on Thursday for a live stream. Otherwise, I'll be back for a deadline stream on Saturday at 10:10 AM. Thanks for watching. See you soon.